Hi, everyone. This is Nina Story, and you are listening to UCCS Radio.
Yes, you are listening to UCCS Radio. More specifically, Martin, you're tuned into the Lions Den, the official source for UCCS Sports. Martin, we covered golf, and that's exciting stuff because they're playing right now on spring break in Grand Canyon. And we got another team heading to Grand Junction this weekend as the softball team is going to go play the Colorado Mesa Mavericks. The Mavericks doing quite well this season as well, Martin. So that's going to be a very interesting series. But first, we have got to talk about the monstrous triple header that UCCS had this past weekend against New Mexico Highlands. Martin, they dominated. They outscored their opponents by over 40 runs.
It was,
that's unheard of.
52-9. That's how lopsided that series was. And you know what's unfortunate? I talked to Coach Peterson yesterday about it, and he was like, I said, what's a shame is in the three triple headers that they played where they were unable to play that fourth game.
That's three more wins. Three more home wins.
And I really think they could have easily gotten those.
Against who they play, every one of those series, they swept. And I think that's a great point, Martin, because that's the third triple header this season that was altered due to the weather. So instead of 4 games against that opponent, the Mountain Lions had to settle for 3. And New Mexico Highlands, especially, on the very bottom end of the RMAC standings. Not a very good team. I mean, that's not to... You can't discredit what UCCS did offensively, but at the same time, that fourth game likely would have been a win for UCCS, which would have improved their home record even further. They're 9-0 right now at home. They could be 12-0 at home.
Yeah, and the thing is Highlands, the coach said yesterday, he goes, you never know what you're going to get with Highlands because they have some really good players. In fact, they had a player leading the conference in home runs, or at the top of the conference in home runs.
And their pitcher, too, is right behind Becca Smith. Brink was right behind Smith in wins and in strikeouts. So.
And I got to tell you, by that third game, because UCCS put up runs early in that third one,
they were demoralizing.
They were just demoralized.
They were out of it mentally.
And you can just imagine they were probably ready. They were almost probably mentally already getting on the bus, ready to go.
Well, and then they had to hang out for another night because the fourth game was still scheduled for Saturday, and it didn't get canceled until Saturday morning. So not only did they not get to go home, they had to linger around in Colorado Springs and just eat it up. That for them, that had to be tough. But for us, big wins.
But I wish we could have had a chance to play those 3 extra games.
12-0 at home. That's what they could have been right now.
The way they were playing last weekend, for sure, I think they would have taken it because you know what, they've gotten one key too, and recently is the pitching of Corey Copeland. She's
come on strong, 3-0, Martin, on the season,
and she's I think helped. Kind of, you're getting to that third game, and a lot of times there's a big drop off. But Corey's coming along. She's only a sophomore right now, and she's got 2 upperclassmen to look to for that leadership, and then that's one of the keys I think to this team. But for sure, they've got a lot of talent. Like the infusion of young talent on this team is just unbelievable.
Well, Martin, I think before we get to Cornfine. Because, Martin, last week we were on the verge of announcing our Shining Lion as Corey Colpins, and I think she is well deserving of it this week. Personally, she deserved it last week. But this week, Martin, 3-0 now. Before we move on to the other stellar players, which are absolutely right, Cornfiend and a few others, let's give Corey Colpins the recognition that she deserves. Because last season, Martin, you know this as well as anybody, she wasn't supposed to be the number 2 starter all season long, but because of the way things broke down with the team, she ended up having to start every second game for the Mountain Lions, and she was just thrust into that starting position. And although the wins didn't reflect every game her stellar effort, I mean, that was a tough situation for her, and I can't speak enough about her willing to adapt and try to take on that role. And she did the very best she could, Martin. I mean, the Mountain Lions finished with a .500 record. They were right on the verge of making the playoffs, and she was that number 2 pitcher. She did a great job into that role. And now this season, you're seeing her in the role she thought she was going to be. That relief kind of a pitcher, third game in a triple header, and now she's 3-0, and she's playing great. She's pitching great.
And she's getting a lot of confidence. Like last year, I think helped her at times, although it can, shake the fortitude in the sense that, it was just tough. Like she was just thrown into that situation. But I think that she's seen success come. She's maturing. She's becoming more of a leader as well. And so it's paying off. Things are working out well for her. And it's good to see because, you can tell she's a big team player because, being put in that position last year, she just did what she had to do and what they asked her to do, and she did her best. And then to see her come through as well, because her role right now is just as important as those first two, because you would like to get that third game win.
Oh, absolutely, every time.
And what that does is why it's really important is because it helps your first two starters.
Takes the pressure off of Becca Smith and Jessica Beltran.
That's right. They don't feel like, oh, we have to come in, because MJ, you and I have watched plenty of games where the opposing pitcher gets pulled after the first or second inning.
That very mentally damaging.
Yeah, that wears down on the rest of the pitching staff. And so to have, your first two pitchers go out there, they can pitch 5 or 6 innings or, the full game. And then your third pitcher come in, and if she can hold her own through 5, 6, 7 innings and get that, even if she doesn't get the win, if she can stay in there and be consistent, that's going to save the rest of your pitching staff. And so that's how important her role is. And I think we've seen the benefits as well. The pitching staff is doing much better. Their ERA is falling. It's, on the, it's getting better because, you look for trends. Like I look at the numbers where it is now, and I think it's like 4.11 ERA, which isn't spectacular, but it's right in the middle of the conference, and it's getting better though each week. And that's what you want to do. In fact, looking at all the numbers, the way the trend is going right now is that everything's improving, and you want to see that when you're heading towards the postseason.
Well, I got to say, Martin, it's quite a luxury in a conference where you're lucky to have one ace.
Yes.
It's a luxury to have 3 solid starting pitchers, because most other teams right now in the RMAC are lucky to have that one dominant pitcher. They're even more lucky if they have a second pitcher as good as our second pitcher in Jessica Beltran. And if they had a third option like we have, I think some of these other teams strategically would do things much differently. Because even this past weekend, how much did we see their ace, Jessica Brink? We saw her 2 times at least, and by the third game, Martin, she just didn't have anything left.
Yeah, and plus, what the negative thing about that too is, if you have to bring your best pitcher out there quite a bit, the batters are going to see her a lot, so they're going to get used to her and they'll figure her out. Right? It just takes a little while to figure a pitcher out. I don't care how good they are. If she's out there for a couple of games, the batters will start picking up unless they're just absolutely dominant. So it didn't help them that she had to come out there so much. And you're right. But the top teams do have, they're at least 2 deep. And UCCS is in that category, but we've got a third starter who's really coming on. And it's not going to only help us this year, but it's going to help next year as well.
We talk about the longevity of your pitchers, too. In a very long season, 40 to 50 games, That's not even including postseason. So when you're talking about that many games, the fewer pitches you can have your aces pitching, the more that's going to keep them fresh and healthy for the postseason. So we're talking about making a run in the RMAC playoffs and possibly the NCAA playoffs as well.
Yep.
I mean, and Corey Colpin is going to be a big part of that. She might not get that starting pitch in those games, but she gave that relief to both of the top 2 pitchers, which allowed them to stay healthy to make that run. So, I mean, when you're talking about a long season, any inning that you can spare your ace is going to be an inning you can throw them out there later.
And I will say this team this season is much more improved in everything. They lead the conference in fielding percentage, which is a huge improvement because last year they were either in the bottom half, if not last, in many categories on defense. And so right now to see them set the goal of a 970 fielding percentage and then be at 969, which is actually leading the conference.
That is number one in the entire RMAC right now.
Here's the thing. They're not beating themselves. They're not making a lot of mistakes out there. And even though the ERA for the pitchers is a little high, the fact is they don't give up.
So are the strikeouts.
Yeah, but they don't give up a lot of walks either. They're making the other team earn their way onto getting on base. And so, pitching is much improved. Their fielding, which it all goes hand in hand, right? Because the pitchers have to know that they have to rely on the defense to make plays. If the defense doesn't make plays, if the players behind them don't make plays, then that puts pressure on the pitchers to make better pitches. And so if you can have confidence in the players behind you, it makes your job going out there easier to be able and say, listen, I know if they hit the ball that my team will scoop it up and get the out for me. They'll save me if I make a mistake on a pitch. And so you see that. Now the hitting was there last year. It kind of dropped off towards the end, but this year it's as strong as ever. In fact, we talked about Peyton Cornfiend, and she can get on base anytime she wants.
She can bunt the ball and beat out the throw and get a single on a bunt. She can also slap it into center field for a home run. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and Coach Peterson was talking about it yesterday. He said the only time she doesn't get on base is when she either strikes out or pops up, and that doesn't happen very often. And he said, it's funny because now that she went yard in this last series, she had her
two
second
times. Mark, she had 2 home runs in this series.
The thing is that he noticed that because she's good at bunting for hits and slapping it, and he said, you know what? If the team start coming in on her,
she's hitting a home run.
She's going to hit it past them, or she's going to hit a home run.
If they play deep, she's going to bunt it. How do you play her?
She's almost impossible to get out, which is good because you want to start a game with your leadoff hitter. If she can get on base,
automatic on base.
Let me tell you, that takes so much pressure off everybody else. Because now you've got somebody on base, you've got it going. The rhythm starts happening for the hitters.
Not only that, but she's also, Martin, in the top for steals as well. So she's stealing. She's getting on base and then putting herself in scoring position almost immediately at the start of games.
We're talking freshmen here.
Freshmen. Yeah. That's right. Freshmen. I mean, this is exciting stuff. Martin, you talk about the Mountain Lions offense being the top of the RMAC. Well, let's just go through some of these statistical categories real quickly so that way it puts some perspective on how good this team is. Right now, the Mountain Lions are first in slugging percent, hitting .557. First in on-base percentage at .449.
And may I interrupt? On-base percentage? To be first in that is one of the keys to winning teams. That is,
you got to get on base if you want to score.
Let me tell you, as far as stats go, because I don't look at average as much or slugging, but I'll tell you that on base percentage, if you can lead the league in that is such a key stat. Well, and that tells a lot about how good this offense is.
Well, you might not want to look at the average, but I do, Martin. And they're first for batting average at .379, which, Martin, that's in the top 15 in the nation as well. So they are dominating in that category. First in the RMAC for stolen bases. First in the RMAC for RBIs. First in the RMAC for runs. That's ridiculous. They are first in every major offensive category in the RMAC right now. They are completely dominating. And granted, New Mexico Highlands was a team that we feasted on and really we kind of enhanced and embellished a little bit a lot of those stats over the weekend because you played a lower tier team. But they still, that's how good they are. They rank among the top in everything.
Yeah, and I mean, you could look at it a couple of ways. They've beat up on teams that are not very good, but here's the thing. Good teams do that, right? Good teams win the games they're supposed to win. And they've stayed competitive against mid-tier teams to high level. Like early on in the season, they tied the game with Colorado Mines. But my kind of benchmark for the team as far as runs and production.
Well, you're setting goals with the team right now. That's part of your study, right? That we need to get to.
And one thing that I'm looking at is run differential, which means how many runs do you score compared to how many you give up from the other team. And so good teams in this league and good teams overall in any league in softball, you want to have to be able to score twice as many runs as you give up. And so right now, UCCS is about as good as they've been all season. They're at 1.91 runs.
So for every
ratio.
one run the other team scores, we score
about
nearly
almost two. We're right there. We're so close to it, and that's exactly where they set the goal. They wanted to be at 2-1, and they're almost there. So that's such a telling stat to me because, you know, I've gone through, not just looked at good teams in our league, but I've looked at other teams. And that's traditionally, you have to have 2 or more runs to what you give up. And for them to be hitting that goal, but they're hitting all their goals. They set a goal of 970 for fielding. They're at 969.
A hair below.
And they had
you
want to hear a crazy stat? They set their goal for an on-base percentage of basically 550%. Like
every other batter gets on base.
Yeah,
somehow.
So they're on base half the time. Basically, that was their goal. And right now they're at 450.
They're close to that too.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
That is impressive.
And they still need to work on they had a ERA goal of 3, which is very hard to do. There's only a couple of teams in this league, and not a whole lot of teams in softball in general, in any league, achieve that. And so for them, they're getting close. If they can get down under 4, I think they'll be very competitive. But, I think the key is what gives me hope about this team when we go up against the other top teams in this league.
How about 10 run rule victories on the season?
That's crazy. That is crazy. I think is that they're well balanced, right?
Freshmen to seniors, offense and defense, pitching
everything.
And batting.
Everything. They don't really have like a big glaring weakness. And
right.
You can look at some teams and say, well, they're really good at this, but they're not as good in that. But,
last season you could look at the defense and say there are way too many errors on this team, and that is really affecting your ability to pull out some of these close games. Because as you mentioned, they were in the top of the RMAC offensively, but if you're committing however many errors per game, that's not going to help the cause. And this season, that's the biggest difference. You talk about that fielding percent so high, top in the RMAC, they're not committing errors. They are not beating themselves. And that continuously puts pressure on the other team to make solid hits.
But it also relieves pressure on everybody else, right? Because even it translates to your offense where you feel like, hey, we're not giving up as many runs because we're playing good defense, so that means we don't have to score as many runs. Although that
doesn't seem to be the case because Martin,
they can put up run. I mean, it was crazy looking at some of the innings.
Martin, look at these numbers from this past weekend. The first game, all 3 of these games, they run rule for a victory. First game, 15-3. Second game, Martin, 21-2. We're talking softball here. The third game of the series, 16-4. You add all that up, Martin, it was what, 50-something to 9? I mean, 52-9.
Well,
ridiculous.
In conference, now I'm talking about overall these stats that I'm looking at, but in conference, they're over 2.5 ratio. They're scoring 2.5 runs to 1. That's how crazy it is right now. So, but I mean, the different players, it's like getting the infusion of all the different players, on this team. You got Allie Corrids. I mean, she's come in and just played phenomenally. I mean, we've already had several players that are young and on this team that have been getting all the accolades.
Well, Allie Corrids was player of the week a few weeks ago. Jessica Belsterling, player of the week.
TJ Floodman.
Floodman, right now, she had 2 home runs in that second game alone. And right now, Martin, a 16-game on-base streak.
Yep.
Last 16 games in a row, she's been on base. Cornfine has had a hit in the last 10 games. She's got a 10-game hitting streak. I mean, everywhere you look.
But I mean, you've got Jessica Belsterling. I mean, she's
hitting
just killing
in the 4 spot and pitching great games.
And then you've got MJ Emily Jennings.
I'm not out. Emily Jennings.
Yeah, Emily Jennings. I mean,
Martin, she went 7 for 10 from the plate this past weekend. Martin, she had 7 RBIs in one game. Ridiculous.
Yeah,
That's unheard of.
I don't know. I think she's like the unheralded. I mean, like she doesn't get as much praise as because she's really, I think, a key role player for this team.
I think she's starting to come on strong now because last season she was plagued with some injuries throughout the season, and that really hampered her ability to get in a rhythm. And softball is all about that rhythm, especially as a hitter. You got to get into that rhythm. This season, we're starting to see her get into that rhythm. She started off injured this season as well, so she's really starting to come back strong now, and we're seeing the true MJ.
Yeah, and I mean, even you could go on down the line. I mean, just the people that even
the reserves. Martin,
that's what I mean.
You got Brittany Hoppy coming off.
Hoppy's come through big time.
You got Danny Fonseca hitting home runs in the pinch hitting spot. I mean, you got great pinch running from Marissa Wallace coming out. I mean, anywhere you go, Jen Schellenberg had a great game 2 weekends ago in Alamosa. I mean, everywhere you go, Martin. I talked to head coach Scott Peterson yesterday as well, and he mentioned the fact that he just couldn't believe when they were up as much as they were up, he was getting some of his reserve players in to give them time. He wasn't trying to run up the score, but lo and behold, the reserves are hitting home runs and putting up RBIs. You can't stop that.
I know.
I mean, what great experience for them.
You don't want to stop them from being aggressive. And, one thing is that he just doesn't, I mean, it's one thing to have your players steal bases and kind of rub it into the other team's face. But, I mean, you can't control a player coming up to the plate and hitting a home run. That's just, that's just instinct.
Quarterback is throwing bombs and getting touchdowns. I mean,
that's on the defense.
Right.
That's the cornerback's
You got to stop
fault.
them. Right. At some point, you got to stop that. And that's the same thing with softball. You're going to get some of your reserves in. You're not going to tell them, don't get a hit here.
When the thing is, you can't take a knee in softball or baseball.
That's true, too. You can't run out the clock. I mean, you can bunt all the way through, but if you're corn fine, you're going to beat that bunt out anyways.
What kind of message are you sending if you say, strike out or try and, dink it or something? I mean, they're not. They're going to go up there and they're going to try and hit it. That's what they do.
That's what they do. That's right, Martin. And so the softball team doing great things.
Yes.
9-0 for the first time at home since the 2006 season. So, I mean, right there, that tells you that they're about as good as they have been in almost a decade. So they're doing really good things. And if they can start pulling out some of these tough wins on the road, Martin, I think that's going to be the difference maker, because this weekend they go to Grand Junction. They play Colorado Mesa, who's one spot ahead of them in the RMAC. They have the number 4 spot right now. So that's a big matchup between teams that are very close, at least on paper. Colorado Mesa has an overall record of 13-8-1, a conference record of 11-4-1. The Mountain Lions with that conference record of 12-5. So they're right there. I mean, these teams are neck and neck right now. So this is going to be a great series. Martin, I'm excited for this series. And for the fans out there, you can check GoMountainLions.com this weekend for the latest updates and results from those games. You can follow us on Twitter too, because we'll give you live updates that way as well. Be sure to also like us here at the Lions Den on our Facebook page at the Lions Den UCCS. Follow us at the same handle for our Twitter. And Martin, as always, we tell them stalk us in real life if you really want to.
Sure.
Always looking for new stalkers.
Yeah.
Always. So, Martin, this is going to just about conclude our show for today. Yeah, you look at the clock and you can't believe time flies when you're having fun here on spring break at the Lions Den. So that's the spring break episode, my friend. We did it.
We got through it.
We did it.
So did our listeners.
Yeah, everybody made it today. It was rough going, but we got through it and we did it. And I had fun. Martin, thanks for joining me today as always.
Well, as always, we get on here and we I don't know why we're continually surprised at the fact that, when we get going on UCCS athletics, we run out of time to cover everything. Like there's even on off weeks when we don't have guests, we still have a lot cover. So
well, that's right, Martin. We didn't even cover it all because the UCCS track and field team was also in action this past weekend. Actually, not the team, just 2 members from the men's team went to Greeley to partake in an event down there. So you can check GoMountainLions.com for the latest results from that. And Martin, before we go, what do?
What to watch for?
Not a whole lot this weekend, Martin. Things are dying down at this point of the semester, but golf still in action right now at the Grand Canyon Thunderbirds Invitational in lovely Phoenix, Arizona at the Grand Canyon for spring break. Gotta love those golf kids. So we're going to get you all the results from that next weekend because it is still going live right now, or next Tuesday at 10, I should say. And this weekend, the softball team in Grand Junction. So that's it, Grand Junction and Grand Canyon. That's all we're going to for spring break. So, again, check us out on Facebook. Get all the latest information and news from there. And, Martin, till next time, as always, go Mountain Lions!